Let's start with each of you. I'll start with you, Amanda. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your connection to Afghanistan and why you are so passionate about helping displaced and at-risk Afghans?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. Prior to July of 2021, I had honestly never met an Afghan. And my only real connection to this is I have several friends that had served. As a veteran, I do tend to hang out with a lot of other veterans, and I saw that they were struggling with trying to advocate for the Afghans that they were trying to assist and manage the data of these individuals. So I actually helped to organize a particular system that's being used by some of the advocacy community focused in this issue, and I've just continued to advocate for very particular cases going forward.
Rokhsar, why don't you tell me a little bit about your connection and what your organization, Canadians for Afghans, is doing to try to help displaced and at-risk people in Afghanistan?
I myself am Afghan, right? And we had a smoother process in the late 1900s to get to Canada and flee the country. And I have joined this organization to, of course, help my fellow Afghans, right, and make the process smoother for them as well, because I have the advantage of being here. So since after that, Taliban coming to rise again, right, I definitely want to be a part of this process.
Dave, why don't you expand a little bit on your connection and maybe give Canadians who are watching a sense of what it is like in Afghanistan right now, if you can.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. So I got implicated in this because since I came back in 2011 from my deployment in Afghanistan, I was really trying to get my interpreter to Canada and thought that there would logically be some sort of program to bring them home. But unfortunately, there wasn't. And communicating with him over the years and trying to find an avenue of approach, it finally became clear that there was really only one avenue of approach, which was Afghan Canadian Interpreters, which was an organization that was created by Wendy Long. And I got involved with her and started advocating on her behalf for the organization. And that finally led to some sort of movement and some sort of response in 2021. However, on the ground right now, I speak regularly with my friends that are there, and it's not very good just because we don't have a presence. So all our information is secondhand, and unfortunately, we don't have a real grip of what's going on, other than the fact that Afghans are just not making it back to Canada.
So, Dave, was your interpreter able to make it to Canada, or is he still there?
So thankfully, I was able to get both my interpreters out of Afghanistan, one to Canada and one to the UK, because the process was just far too slow for him to come to Canada. The issue now is their families, and they are just being stonewalled and being forgotten at the moment.
We've got about a minute. Can you give a sense of the type of risk that an interpreter who had helped Western forces would be at, and what type of risk their families would be at now that the Taliban controls a lot of Afghanistan?
Well, I mean, to put it bluntly, it's death, rape, torture. I mean, there's no greater consequence than that. And that's literally what the consequences are on the ground in Afghanistan to this day. And that's why the need to bring them over is so dire, because these are individuals that literally put their lives on the line for our country, walked side by side with me and everybody else that deployed during our 10 years of war in Afghanistan. Their families served with them as well, because they were constantly at risk of being murdered and tortured during that time. And now even more so, they don't have our protection. So it's a very pressing issue that needs to be addressed.
And it's certainly, these are people who I think would make wonderful Canadians if they had the opportunity to come here. They've already done so much for Canadian forces. We've got to go to break, but we'll be right back.